Hi, this is Martin Drummond with Progressive News. It's Monday, June 3rd, 2019. And I'm going to talk to you about these shootings that occur. Of course, you can kind of lump them into different categories, like the latest one is, a workplace. Kind of a social kind of thing. Somebody's so angry they start killing everybody, and in that respect they're all the same, right? I mean, these are all people with grievances. Now, what I want to talk about today, though, is something that's not covered at all in the news, and it proves that the media, certainly, but to a certain extent the people, because this is a pervasive, ubiquitous problem, which means overall that everybody seems to have this problem, except for me. I'm the only person I know who doesn't seem to avoid looking at this problem, and the problem is simply that people don't want to look at the obvious problem. And that is in the case of this guy, he worked as a civil engineer or something like that for the government. And I've been watching the news reports all along, and they've known what he was mad about. I mean, he left, statements. His boss obviously knows. The people who work there obviously know. The people he's pissed off at, and probably shot most of them, obviously knew, and people know what he's upset about, and the media just dance around it. As a matter of fact, they cover everything else. Oh, the police responded so quickly, and and if you really care about the victims, then you would want to come up with a solution to stop people. You would want to come up with a way to run our country in such a way that we're not pissing off so many people, right? So you would want to come up with a solution for workplace. So guys like this, you would want to head them off at the pass. You would want to address their grievances. So terrorists, you'd want to address their grievances. You'd want to, what's other kinds of categories of these guys? Okay, so fascists, you'd want to address their grievances. What are they upset about? Abortion people kill a guy like Tillman. What is their grievance? But nobody cares about that. I mean, you don't see anybody when there's a shooting. Like when they killed Tillman, you didn't see anybody coming on the news and saying, well, the guy who killed him had a legitimate grievance. Maybe if we deal with that legitimate grievance. And I'm not saying just give in to them, right? I'm not saying give them everything on a silver platter, but sit down. So my point is that the media doesn't ever even look at it from that point of view. It's just, they're criminals, they killed a bunch of people, which is true. I'm not arguing against that. I'm not saying what they did was right because they had grievances. What I'm saying is nobody's interested, because that's the only solution. The only solution to all these shootings that we're having in the United States is to get to these people, because I've looked at these and I've dug into them to find out what the people's grievances were, because nobody else was doing that. Although the information is out there, so some people are at least publicizing what the people, what their problem was. So, and I don't see a problem with addressing I don't see a problem with giving whistleblowers a place to get a legitimate hearing, because 99%, 99.9999% of the time, whistleblowers and people like that have legitimate. I mean, we should be looking at what they're upset about. You know, the Palestinians, we should be looking at the fact that all their land was taken from them. No, I don't say give them back their land, because we can't at this point. The people who stole it have it, and they have nuclear weapons. What I'm saying is, come up with alternative solutions. And yes, I know the people who commit these acts very often won't be satisfied with the solution. So like you take the Palestinians, well, give them their own country somewhere else. Yes, they'll be unhappy. Yes, they want their land back, but they can't have it. But if you give them a country somewhere else, so what I'm saying is but nobody even comes close to doing something like that, right? They just leave them there, sitting, festering, firing rockets into Israel and all this stuff, when we could easily come up with something that would pacify the situation. So, you know, that's my beef today. And I think that you should accept the fact that I guess if you watch my show, you already know that, yes, I'm covering the same things, but I'm pointing out things that, I don't know why people, I guess because they're propagandized so much, but they don't seem to, they just dance around these things, right? And it annoys me. It really does. It annoys me that even my progressive, the people I watch, like Kyle Kalinske and Real News, and, you know, Real News hits on it a lot more than anybody else. Mike Figueredo, the Humanist Report. I don't know. I mean, everybody, not just them. Nobody seems to see these things. You know, look a little deeper and try to look past your propagandization, because that's what I think it is. I think it's an entire, you know, that you grew up your entire life being subjected to this kind of crap.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Are you from military background?
Coastal city. Many residents know someone directly impacted by the massacre.
People die in war, and that's sad, but there was no reason for this. And it's just a very sad, probably very sick individual that caused this.
Was he? Was he sick? Or was he just fed up and decided that, well, before he goes out of this world, he wanted to get some payback? Because payback's a bitch, right? Look, these things are going to happen over and over again. And these people who are put on the media just because they look the part and then they're portrayed as intelligent, they're morons. They don't understand what's going on. You do now, because you listen to this broadcast. So take what you learned out there and, you know, try to get it put into place. I mean, we need to get to these people, these, you know, if we just, oh, they're just sick and there's always going to be sick people. I mean, what a defeatist policy in dealing with this problem. You know, and it's not the guns. That's the thing. It's the culture that creates the anger, that creates the response. because you know what? If somebody's angry enough and they have a little bit of money, they're going to get the guns. You know, no matter where. I mean, if you can't get them legally, you'd be able to buy them illegally. If you put enough effort into it, there's illegal guns. And there's legal guns in the United States, so that's not even an issue. So we can't solve, I mean, yes, there's a lot of things we can do about keeping guns out of people's hands, but this guy didn't have a record. He didn't make it clear that he was a dangerous individual. So, the key here, okay, so all you fucking idiots out there who say or act like you want to solve this problem, like you want to create less problems, less shootings. Well, Columbine. Look at Columbine. If somebody at that school had said, okay, we've got these white hats, they're called the white hats, they're Christians at our school and they're creating a problem, they're acting like they're better than everybody else, you know, they're the football quarterback and the prom queen, and they all walk around school like they're better than everybody else, and they're pushing and creating problems. And we know a couple of students have come to us and said, look, you know, these people are a problem. Nobody did anything about it. Eventually, two guys who were rather eccentric, you know, the kind of goth kind of people, the atheists and whatever, they just got fed up and decided they were going to make a statement. And everybody, for all my life since it happened, Columbine, I've seen everybody in America pretty much, except for me, thinks of these two guys as just evil, possessed pieces of shit. Well, I'm not saying that I don't abhor what they did, but at the same time, I completely understand how angry they were. I mean, I spent all of high school looking at these guys and girls who just thought they were better than everybody else, pushing everybody around. I understand exactly where the guys from Columbine were coming from. And I understand how they, well, I don't know the details, but I know a lot of details of a lot of these things. And a lot of these people, for instance, the whistleblowers, I'd say about 9 out of 10 of them went through their channels to try to resolve their problems first. And when they couldn't get it done, and I'll give you perfect examples of that. I know several whistleblowers where I read that they went to their people in their companies, like Fox News. They went to Fox News executives and said, look, you know, this isn't fair, what you're doing, I don't know. And they couldn't get anybody to listen to them. Eventually they even got fired, so they went, and this was something to do with bovine cow milk stuff, I remember seeing it. And they ended up having to make their own documentary on it after they were fired. People like Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning, he went to his superiors and he tried to expose what was going on. All these whistleblowers, they all went, especially in the military, they went through the chain in the military, only to find out that the military wasn't even they were only trying to make sure that information didn't get out, right? So in America, for sure, and that's all I'm going to talk about today, also, although I assume this is going on all around the world. The opposite of what I'm talking about is happening. Instead of a legitimate, quorum, or a legitimate look at their problems and their objections, their whatever. The opposite's happening. They're constantly, like this guy who in Virginia, the Virginia shooter, whatever he is, I'm sure that he went through his, tried to get something done about whatever, and the local news, these people, they haven't said, they don't even say what his grievance is. They don't care, because we're so propagandized to just condemn the shooter, right? Which I'm condemning. I still say he shouldn't have done it, but nobody's looking at why he did it. And nobody is even going to come close to saying he had a legitimate grievance. Because by shooting all these people, in their eyes, that illegitimizes anything that he might have been upset about. So, I don't know. I just can't see why we're not interested in a real solution to these problems. Because if we took seriously all these people before they start shooting, we could cut it off before it happens. But I think that, in a way, what I think is that the people who, the people who they've got grievances with are in control, and they're so adamant about making sure that they don't get a black eye, that they would rather suffer people dying over and over and over again in these shootings than address grievances of people coming up. You know what I mean? It's like the Palestinian-Israeli thing. The Israelis would rather, they don't suffer any bad effects because they put up all these walls and fenced everybody in. Okay, so all they have to put up with is a rocket or some rockets that don't end up not killing. Well, how about America? We put up with having our kids go overseas and get killed in wars just because we don't want to deal with, because the people who steal the oil and overthrow democratically elected leaders and take over countries overseas, they don't want to have to deal with some kind of backing off of that. See what I'm saying? Is the only possible explanation I can come up with for not instituting what do you call it, like when you are in the workplace and you have a grievance, so you have a person who will come in and sit down and give it an honest shot at giving everybody a fair hearing. The only reason we don't want to do that, that creates all these shooters, is because somebody, either us, we're too ambivalent, we don't care, or the people who are creating the problems that piss these people off so bad are making sure that things don't change to address the people who have problems. Either way, I think it's in the people's best interest, because the people are getting killed, right? I don't know, maybe in some ways these shooters are the best solution. Maybe, the person who gets upset and flips out, at least they end up killing people who I assume are really bad. I'm assuming that this guy killed the person or persons who were really fucking him over. So in that respect, who knows? Maybe it's poetic justice. I don't know, because we never find out really exactly. I mean, like Columbine. Those guys, who did they kill? They killed the white hats. Did they kill other people? You know, in a war, we just call it collateral damage. But when these people go out and get revenge, like vigilante types, are they maybe more accurate than other types of deaths? You know, where other people, I mean, certainly in a war, we kill way, way, way more civilians. And of course, there's the argument that's created that kind of warfare. It started just before World War II with the rise of fascism. This terror war, you know, bombing civilians out of existence to try to get the civilians to turn on their own leaders. It's a terrorist, state terrorism. Anyway, I digress. My point is that, and by the way, when I digress like this, I really am, I'm shaking things up. I'm trying to get in there and think of things. I don't believe the things that I say. I'm just, you know, hashing it out. So if you hear me say things that are crazy when I'm doing that, I'm sorry, but all I'm doing is letting you see the thought process that I'm going through to try and figure these things out, because I'm trying to pass on the way I think to other people. And I think that everybody thinks that way. It's just that they bury that kind of thought deep within inside of them, because very often, let's face it, a lot of that stream of consciousness kind of thinking is very raw, right? I mean, it's not well thought out. We think it, and you know what it is? You're digging in to it's creativity. You're digging in to things that have never been thought before, and you're bringing them up. You're pulling them out of the depths, and very often they can be kind of dark, deep kind of thoughts. And then, you know, that's how we get smarter, because that's how you create. So you pull these thoughts out, but then you take the time to stop and think about them. It's just like in my I was thrown in jail for terroristic threatening, and a lot of what I had to say that they were upset with was things where, because I wasn't talking to them, I was doing a news segment, and I was doing the same thing. I was digging. I was looking at this same subject. I mean, we're not even leaving the subject. I was looking at why people, or I was looking at how dangerous it is for the people who work for the food stamp people to piss everybody off. And I was pointing out that if you piss enough people off, sooner or later somebody's going to come in and blow somebody up or kill somebody, right? So I was trying to look into that. When you do that, you're looking into very deep, convoluted, hard to understand subject matter, right? And so what I pointed out, though, in my defense, when I was working on my defense of why I wasn't guilty, is that when people get upset, right, and they decide they're going to do something like shoot people, like this guy did, the reason that they do it is because they don't have a defense mechanism. The people who don't shoot people, they look at their anger and their desire for revenge, and they say, no, I'm not going to do that. So I would rather a person So, okay, so what I'm saying here is that if a person is incapable of accepting the fact that they have these deep this anger, the desire to kill people and all that stuff. Okay, so everybody has that, is what I say. The people who deny that they even have that anger, and quite often they're trying to deny it to say, oh, well, I'm better than everybody else. I don't have those feelings. Bullshit. So if they deny it, then they can't create a defense mechanism against them. At least if you admit you have the feelings, you can, I mean, if you don't admit it, then you can't defend against it. So, you know, like I get real angry because somebody on the phone just does something awful to me when I'm trying to get my food stamps. So that was in my case, which happened repeatedly, you know, or in person, or when I'm trying to work on the website. I mean, the crazy shit that they did to me. So, yeah, for a little while, or they throw you in jail. That makes you angry, right? Or it may not even make you angry. It just may make you want revenge for being treated unjustly. Because I wouldn't say that a lot of the time. I wouldn't say I get angry. I just come to the conclusion that I've been shafted, right? I mean, that's how it happens, right? Everybody in their life gets shafted. Everybody has somebody get in their face or do something even though they didn't deserve it. And so you come to the conclusion that justice would be revenge, right, of some kind. Or justice, that you want justice. You can't get it. So if you don't even admit to yourself that you're angry and you want justice or revenge, I don't know, the two are pretty close together most of the time. So if you don't even admit to those feelings of anger and the desire to have revenge, and you start thinking about revenge, how you could get it, you know, getting away with murder, things like that. If you don't even admit that you have those feelings, how are you going to defend against those feelings? You can't. So that's what I'm saying is, and that's very hard to articulate, but I've articulated it here. That's an important step, something that's very hard to do. It's been done now. So that's the important thing to me, is that we stop pretending like, you know, we don't all have these feelings, and that really the better person is the person who admits they have the feelings, and therefore can come up with, because I've never killed anybody, so that's proof right there that I have a mechanism, because I admit that I've felt very often, you know, whenever somebody gets me like really upset, and I feel like, you know, I mean, I can even, to give you an example, I can give you a perfect example. So when I hear that the president or the governor or any of those people in power have done something that ended up getting innocent people killed, then I immediately come to the conclusion, well, they're murderers. This idea that just because they're the governor or the president or the Congress or whoever, they somehow are immune to being responsible. Even I think about my jury. My jury put me in jail for 3 months for something I didn't do. So therefore they are guilty of kidnapping and holding me hostage for, or whatever, however you want to think of it. They're guilty of that. Those 6 people who said, yes, throw him in jail for 3 months. They're guilty. I think I deserve revenge. Well, so for all of those kind of situations, Um, I have obviously had a defense mechanism. It's not because they can all defend themselves. I mean, I could go find my judge and blow him away if I wanted to, right? It's not like they have some kind of magic way of defending themselves. Uh, but, and this was the stuff I was talking about that got me thrown in jail. I mean, why is discussing it and discussing how you think and how you feel, how can they make that illegal for people to discuss it? I mean, I've never once said that, or even come close to doing anything, or even saying that. I mean, when I go through that thought process and I feel like I deserve justice, okay, that's how we'll leave this. Where I get to that point where I feel like I deserve justice. The defense mechanism for me is simply that I don't want to go there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be in that situation. You know, like the guy who just shot all these people. You know, I don't want to be him on a stretcher. I would rather face losing my job or losing, because to me, I've come to the conclusion that life is a joke, kind of. You know, that all this fear of losing things, I guess since I was a kid, you know, I've been told by different people who I consider very good people, in different places in the media and in real life people contacts, that, you know, all this materialism is a joke. Now, you're constantly pulled in the other direction, right? You're constantly told that materialism is everything, and oh, you gotta have your this and you gotta have your that. Well, you know what? Over and over again, I have decided the opposite. So I've been faced with losing everything many times in my life, and I've lost everything many times in my life. I mean, I've got up and left everything behind, gone somewhere else, started over many times. Few times I had to. Maybe that was the key to my way of handling things. You know, in Beirut, we had to leave. Actually, I was on vacation, never got to go back, never got your stuff. When your stuff finally came, all of it was gone anyway. There wasn't anything left. So over and over again in my life, I've had to face that. And sooner or later, you're going to have to face it for real, right? Death. You're going to leave everything behind. And I've always come to the conclusion every time, I mean, at the time, that it's better off just to leave it behind. But then afterwards, you find out the truth, right? You never lose anything. Really. You just start over. So, you know, I've talked about very dark, yes, dangerous. People will think of it as dangerous, what I'm talking about. But I'm going to leave you in the same place where I end up when I face these problems, because it's a very positive thing. Because I've always found out after the fact that I was afraid of something that wasn't worth being afraid of. So when you go into these situations, you need to keep that in mind, because that'll dampen the fear, right? I mean, that'll keep you from doing anything stupid. You always wait and see. You know, so you're looking at trying to fight your way out of a situation. Well, how about just passively waiting and seeing what happens, right? So you got somebody right in your face going crazy, but they haven't done anything to you yet. They're just trying to scare you. Don't react to the fear. See what I'm saying? I'm not saying don't ever defend yourself. Certainly. But what I'm saying is, this kind of preemptive strike kind of attitude, it just creates more problems than it solves. In the end, you're always better off if you kick back and try to separate yourself from the situation, absolutely, and then see how your life works out. You're better off. You're just better off. So, that's pretty much how I'm going to leave it, because it's always worked for me. Anytime that I've tried to do something, like maybe in my folly, is in my youth, it's kind of like Back to the Future or something. You're trying to do something because you think it'll create a better future for you, right? Well, you can't really second guess that. You can't really predict that. Your best option is always to back away and try and look at the situation objectively. Believe me, when it comes to that point where you need to defend yourself, you'll be plenty aware of it. And you should always be prepared to defend yourself. You should take martial arts. You should learn how to use guns. You should learn how to use any kind of weapons. But you should never use them. How people say you know it when you see it? Well, when you reach a situation where you need to defend yourself, you will know it. I've always known it. But when you go out of your way to try and avoid those situations, thinking that you can change the future and that you can predict the future, I think you better stop and think about what you're doing. Okay? This is Martin Drummond with Progressive News. Hope you enjoyed my segment. Thanks.